Hi everyone, it's Carolyn here to share another message today. This time I don't have a channel, I have a topic that I want to talk about, and it's about how the ego will pop up during your awakening journey and ascension journey as you think you may have things kind of figured out with your ego. And I want to talk about a situation that happened to me this week that I could not believe. And then I'm going to talk about 3 things for you to watch with respect to how the ego can pop in when you're in these circumstances. So first of all, I want to say, as you can tell, I'm sick. Since 11/11 and then the full moon right after, I, bam, got ill. And now this is 5 days later. And I felt the worst yesterday. So I don't know, did anybody else have that happen? Because obviously I'm clearing something big here and it's not been fun. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out to you guys because we had all that happen here recently and this is what I ended up with. And so yeah, there you go. Anyway, so got to put up with this crackly voice today. So let's just get right down to it because I want to talk about, I'll outline 3 scenarios where your ego or your I always call it our mind, our human mind, will find a way to sneak back in. Now, I'm going to start with my journey. I work at home. I work by myself. I'm in these 4 walls. My ego is pretty taken care of when I'm in these 4 walls, right? It's just me. I manage my own time. I set my own schedule, all of that. I do my meditations. I talk to my mind, body, and soul, mind being my ego. I ask it to come along for the ride, and that higher self is in charge. It talks back to me and is, really learned a lot over the 3 years that I've been on, or almost now 4, I guess. I've been on this awakening journey. And I kind of think I might have gotten a little cocky about this because I learned a huge lesson this week. So before I get into that huge lesson, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my journey. So I really kind of thought that and I think I've said this before, the last bastion of my ego is on the tennis court, right? And I beat myself up on the tennis court and it makes it not fun for me. I am so much better now, but I get real upset if I don't play well. How silly is that? That's just silly. But that's the competitive me. That's the emotional me. The ego loves to feed off that, right? And I have struggled with that part of this, of working with my ego to manage that better and just enjoy my time. I'm not at Wimbledon, for heaven's sakes. So with that said, that's where I have focused my effort, thinking my ego is, handling itself pretty well. Well, I learned a lesson this week, and I'll share that with you here shortly with the first tip. So before I start talking about the 3 ways that I have seen the ego come back in, I want to mention that I am not one to subscribe to the death of the ego or banishing the ego or any of that fight energy. I believe that and I've been told this by my team in the Light Keepers, that the ego is a part of being human. It's just how it surfaces, how it is used, how conscious we are. So it's there for good purpose. So what I do is I embrace it, I bring it along, but I also know that it can be pretty tricky because we're continuing to move into higher consciousness. And as we do that, our ego mind is still there in the background, but we're now being led by our higher selves, right? So, instead of, human mind here leading and our sweet little higher self down here like it's been for so long, now we get this flip-floppy thing going on, right? And you feel that shift as you're going through the awakening journey, okay? So higher self's leading, right? And mind, body, and soul. Higher self's leading the mind and the body. And yet at times, the mind, the ego, it comes up, boom, boom, boom. Well, I want to identify these 3 areas for you to understand where you might find this happening for you, because this is where it happens for me. So the first one is when you're in emotional situations. Emotions. One of the big things in the awakening journey is as we become more conscious and raise our vibration and our consciousness, it's about learning to manage our emotions. A big part of this is. And as we start managing our emotions, our ego has a less opportunity to intervene in the crazy ways it may have in the past. Some of us, it's all degrees, right? Some of us have maybe not ever really been led a lot by our ego. Others of us, oh my Lord, we've just been taken over by it. My big part, it was the competitiveness piece. So that's where my ego would display itself most primarily, competing with others and also mostly competing with myself. So emotional situations, when you're in a tight emotional situation, you're stressed, whatever emotion it is that comes to the surface. If you're needing to make a decision out of that, time frame you're in, when you're in heavy emotion, or you're not feeling like that part of you that during the awakening can feel such calm and peace, when we're not in that flow space, that's when the ego thrives. And that's when we make ridiculous decisions. Lots of times we can go against our natural inklings and understanding of what's best for ourselves. We can make decisions where we look back and we wonder, what was I doing? Where was I? How did this happen? That doesn't even feel like me, particularly in the awakening. Before the awakening, we're not even really consciously aware. We're just completely led by our ego. We just make decisions. We move on. We don't know any better. Now we do. And it's more in your face when all of a sudden the ego starts making decisions and you're kind of down your pathway thinking, you've got some of this managed. But emotional situations, watch that. When you're feeling anger, sadness, grief, name an emotion. And it's not so much I was going to say it's not so much positive emotions as it is the negative. And I use that in terms of the ones that make us feel really good and the ones that don't make us feel good, right? But I will say our positive emotions of like when we get euphoric, that we can, lots of times, euphoric, we can make some really bad decisions because we're so on a high. And I'll use a good example, shopping. Now, I'm not a shopper, but I know this happens when people are super happy and having a good time and feeling good. They just go spend a whole bunch of money and then they wonder, oh my God, what did I do? That whole thing there where we get a lot of energy going and we're enjoying ourselves and we're having fun. We're not making conscious decisions at all. So there's a whole lot of emotion that can come out that can cause the ego to go, I'm grabbing onto that. I'm grabbing onto that. I'm grabbing onto that. So keep that in mind. Be aware of making important decisions, and I could argue any decision, but important decisions when you are in an emotional state. Now remember, this is about us who are going through ascension and awakening are starting to be more aware of this, because you start to get into this state of flow where you feel really good about how things are going with being led from your higher self versus your ego mind, and we're all at different stages of that. But this is the opportunity to be able to recognize when that ego can pop back in and lead you what I call astray. Okay, so emotions, there you go. That's the first one. So the second one, and this is my story of the other night, Thursday night, when we're pressured by our own selves and we're impatient. Impatience is the biggest thing that I want to focus on here. One of the first signs and messages that came to me during my awakening was the word patience. I saw it everywhere. I wrote it down. I'm like, what is that all about? I didn't even realize I wasn't patient. And then it hit me. It's one of the biggest lessons I have in this entire awakening journey. And I know you all do too. You know this. We all want this to go faster. We want to achieve. We want to get to the end, whatever that means, right? So patience is a big issue for a lot of us. Well, what I have found is the ego will love to take that opportunity when we're feeling impatient and urgent and rushing and thinking about the future and thinking about the time, and it'll step in and make some super silly decisions. So here's what happened to me the other night, which was the impetus for this entire video and topic, because I always like to try to figure out what happened. What was going on there? Because it's so off my norm of how I've been the last 3.5 years. So I have decided I need to get out more. I live in a lovely arts community. It's a big university town. We have 30,000 students, but it's a liberal arts school with music and arts galore, always something incredible to do. And I'm like, my God, I've been here so long and I don't take advantage of what is here. And now in the awakening, I'm starting to feel like I want to get out. Oh my gosh, isn't that amazing? Because I've been holed up in my house for about 3 years, other than my lovely one friend who gets me out often, and then my family who comes in. I mean, I'm not that bad. I play a lot of tennis. But the point is I never really focus on getting and taking advantage of the arts in town. So the other night, oh my gosh, there's this beautiful orchestra that came in, and, well, you may have heard of them. Cinematic Orchestra. Anyway, if you haven't, that's who it was. And at one of our local theaters, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've been dying to hear string instruments. So I decided to buy a ticket. I did. I was so excited. Got myself ready to go. Got out in the evening. Went down there and sat. Somehow I had the wrong time. I had read that it opened at a certain time. And I think I was a half hour off. And so I was assuming that as the music was going on, starting with the one person who was playing music on their Apple, all the electronic stuff, for an entire 10 minutes. And then I was like sitting there, and I was kind of antsy anyway. I was like, when is this gonna start? Okay, when's this? I thought this was supposed to already start. I could tell I was starting to get agitated. And then this went on, this music that was super loud. And you know how it is during the awakening, you start getting sensitive to noise. Oh my gosh, this was super loud. So I started to get, the kind of the emotional thing, but also extremely impatient. I was like, I can't sit here any longer. I can't sit here any longer and listen to this. It went on for 20 minutes. And then I said to my spirit team, who, as you know, I'm very connected with, and I said, and I was really agitated. It's a wonder I could even hear them, but I hardly heard them. They were like a soft voice. I said, I'm not staying. I don't want to stay. I got to get out of here. This is ridiculous. If this is what I bought a ticket for, I'm not going to listen to the screechy stuff that somebody's playing on a laptop for 2 hours. So they said to me, and this is key, enough got through where they said to me, 5 more minutes, stay 5 more minutes. So this was 5 till 8. It was like, I knew the concert started at 7:30. So here I was listening to this. It was not at all what I expected. They said, stay 5 more minutes till 8 o'clock for some reason. And there was, in the background, there's the drum set, the whole bit. They're all set up to come out to do this really cool, different kind of orchestra music. But I thought, well, this is what I'm going to get. So I started to get really annoyed, really controlling with this whole thing. And I remember thinking, this isn't like me, and I came out to have a nice evening. But guess what? That got pushed in the background too. Okay, so like my higher consciousness knew that I was being irritated, I was being impatient, but my ego had stepped in, grabbed a hold of the impatience factor. Let's try to control this whole thing rather than sit back and enjoy what you're hearing and realize that this guy can't play on his laptop for 2 hours. Anyway, so my team speaks to me about this. I just pop them in the background, and I'm like, I'm not listening. So I sat till about 5 till, I guess, because they'd started telling me to sit about 1/4 till. Like, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. Picked my stuff up, and I left. I had bought a $38 ticket. Had a glass of wine. Now I'm into the 40s with money spent for what was going to be a lovely evening. And I leave. So I wandered downtown, which is lovely. And I went to the bookstore and blah, blah, blah. Kind of just hung out a little bit and tried to figure out what just happened. Why would my team have me come out to a beautiful evening like this and have this happen to me? Well, I was almost blaming my team for this. And so I went home, and I was so upset. So I've got all the emotion going on, right, and everything. I'm not in flow. And all of a sudden, it hit me before I went to bed. Like, I ruined a perfectly good evening. Because guess what, Carolyn? That guy was the pre-show. He wasn't the headliner. My team wanted me to stay till 8 o'clock when the headliner was coming out. And if you go look at their music online, oh my God, with their new album, which I did not do, I listened to their old music. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Now, my point of telling this long story of this is, look what happened. I let my ego take over because it grabbed onto my impatience factor. It grabbed onto the emotion I was starting to feel, and it raced me forward into leaving and making a decision where I never got to see the beauty of that show. Anyway, then as I came to that realization, I'm like, oh my gosh, I realized that's what happens when not only impatience shows up, but great emotion behind the impatience, right? After you've made the decision, like I said, right? In the height of this impatience and this emotion, all right? And then this is the next piece. I realized, oh, that's right. I forgot to meditate this morning. Oh, that's right. I didn't meditate midday. Oh, and that's right. I didn't meditate before I left. That is so not me. So I had a whipped up day of not being centered, of not being in flow. I was very focused on getting work done, which I have to be aware of that and watch that. But I let this take, so what happened is all of this started to happen, right? And the ego mind, the human mind comes in and grabs a hold of that and races you to a place that you do not want to be. So I spent lengthy time on explaining that scenario of mine because it's a perfect example of what can happen to us. I stuffed my team away. They talk to me. I hear words. If I do that, right, I'm hearing them talk to me and I push them aside. Imagine how much of that we do all the time, right? For those of us who don't even hear our team, right? But you're all going to have your signals and signs and you know how your higher consciousness works, how it flows for you. But the point of this video is to be able to recognize when you're not in flow, when your impatience factor is taking over, when you're feeling emotion, because guess what? That's when the ego steps in. Now, another time you have to watch, and this is coming up with holidays, and you're going to be able to be the observer because we get to that point where we're in the awakening, where we see our human self act in a way where we're like, wait, stop that. But it's super hard to stop that at times when you're triggered, okay? So when you're triggered by someone else, okay, now I'm talking about other people, or you're stressed, or you're upset by what others say or do. Now remember, I'm by myself most of the time. So for me to be around a lot of other people and then family and all of that coming up here soon, oh, I'm going to have to watch myself. Now, I get along great with my family, and I have wonderful friends, but we all know, it doesn't matter how well you get along, you're going to have something that might come up. And I love to get into conversations and, argue sides. So, but that's not me anymore. But the thing is, when you get back in that environment, when you're triggered, your ego is going to go, ooh, this is an opportunity. And vroom, down the rabbit hole you go. So I wanted to bring this up because these are things that, as we go into the holidays, for most of us who celebrate them, guess what? We're going to be around more people. We're going to get triggered. We're going to feel emotions. We're going to get impatient. We're going to be too rushed. And we got to watch that because we can make silly decisions or decisions we're not going to be pleased with after we've made them out of that ego mind, out of that ego state, because our human mind, that's how it's operated for ages, right? And in the awakening, we learn not to operate that way. But it doesn't mean it's gone. It's still there to jump back in. So I really wanted to share with you these 3 ways that I see how we can end up not in flow, end up allowing our human ego mind whip us up into a tornado. We don't hear our spirit team. We don't hear our higher self in helping us in how it normally does during the course of our day. So I hope you have enjoyed this message and taken something away from this that you can use as the upcoming weeks of the end of the year are coming and then moving forward into the new year. So with that today, I thank you for joining me. I'll remind you again of my services, purplerainhealing.com, where I do spiritual awakening mentoring to launch you forward in your awakening journey, where I channel information for you as we work together. I do also channeling and distance energy healing. Check out my services if you're interested in working with me. I would love to work with you. So again, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.